עצביהם כסף וזהב, מעשה ידי אדם.
I just want to share a small lesson with you today that we learned from Sukkot, something very interesting that I found looking through different teachings about what makes this holiday special. As you know, this is a very, very ancient holiday. It goes back to the wanderings of our ancestors in the wilderness, and in the time when the temple stood, this was the major festival. Pretty much all the fall harvest festivals in many, many different cultures, from Canadian Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, Oktoberfest, all the fall harvest festivals, they all find their roots in this festival, the Festival of Booths, the Festival of Tabernacles, Sukkot. But our ancestors celebrated this holiday in a very special way. I want you to think of what it means that our ancestors were commanded, all of them, to gather in Jerusalem at the same time for the same 8-day festival. I don't know if anyone's been in a crowd. Most people don't like crowds. I don't know if anybody's traveled on like those terrible travel days that they tell you to avoid, where the airport is jam-packed and you're standing in line at every 2 minutes to get through the next phase of security. Imagine what it must have been like all those years ago. Maybe a wiser way to organize the holiday would have been to ask the people in different cities to come during different weeks. But the idea was, it's not a true festival unless everybody's there. What Charlie spoke about in his Devar Torah. So everybody made their way up to Jerusalem. Not only that, they all had to make their way to the temple, an even smaller space, where they gathered together with the 4 species. They had to bow, they had to shake the lulav. It must have been really, really crowded up there. How did everybody fit comfortably? How did they manage such an influx of people coming to the Temple Mount at the same time? So the Talmud asks that same question. Talmud was edited a few centuries after the temple was destroyed, and also tries to imagine how the people partook in the celebration, so many at the same time in such a crowded area. This is what the Talmud says. Omdim tzefufim, the people were shoulder to shoulder, very tightly packed in a small area. Ucheshehein mishtachavim, but when they were asked to bow, mishtachavim revachim, suddenly space opened up. V'zeh echad me'asara nisim shena'asu b'mikdash, and this is one of 10 miracles that happened in the time of the temple. So this is really interesting. The Talmud explains that when people came to the temple to celebrate Sukkot, it was very crowded, but a miracle occurred. When it came time to bow, which requires space, there was enough room for everyone to bow. There was enough space for everybody. The exact nature of this miracle is actually subject to some debate. Rashi, the great commentator of the Talmud, understands the miracle plainly. He says the space miraculously opened up when they bowed. The walls expanded, and each person had sufficient space to bow and to shake their lulav all around them. And he adds that this was also very important because people would pray for personal things, and you didn't really want the person next to you to hear what you're praying for. So if you're standing in the temple and saying, I wish that maybe an illness that a friend of mine has would go away, that he would heal, you may not want the person next to you hearing that your friend has that illness. So nobody heard. There was enough space for everyone. They could do their ritual. It was a miracle. The Mishnah offers a slightly different interpretation of the miracle, and this one I really like. In the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah lists 10 miracles that happened in the temple, and this is the last one. Lo amar adam lachavero, tsar li hamakom she'alim birushalayim. Nobody complained that it was too congested in Jerusalem. This is a very different understanding of the miracle. It's not that the walls opened up. It was still crowded. There was still a miracle that took place, but it was a different kind of miracle. You might even say a bigger miracle than the miracle of the walls opening up. Even though it felt crowded, the sheer ability for everyone to join together as a community, to stand together, it overshadowed any sense of discomfort, and all these people, nobody complained. It was a reflection of their attitude. The people knew that it was better to be engaged in a communal effort, better to be in that crowded space than to be disconnected and alone. It was about people not complaining. That was the miracle. Sometimes bigger is better. In Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath, he includes many studies that undermine the popular notion that small class sizes, defined as a class of under 15, result in a better educational experience. He notes not only that reducing class size significantly increases educational costs, but that a class with less than an average of 20 to 25 students lacks a diversity of voices. With that diversity, students can learn more from their peers and teachers, and students become more motivated when they're gathered in a bigger setting. In other words, when we make space for others, we become better learners and more engaged students. This little miracle that happened at the time of the temple, I think it even reverberates in Jewish history. We just completed Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the difference in crowd size in this sanctuary between those days and today is significant. The clergy and the office staff were always very nervous about how the facilities are going to hold up with such a large crowd coming into the area. We don't have enough parking for everyone. Is everyone going to find a seat? Are they going to be able to sit next to the people they came with? But I have to say, I didn't hear any complaints about the crowd size this year. I heard complaints that the sanctuary was too cold. But, yes, I know. It's noted. But with regard to the crowd size, I heard people say how nice it was to have the feeling of being in a full sanctuary. Over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the sense of community is more pronounced than it is the rest of the year, and even though the crowdedness may be uncomfortable and inconvenient, that feeling of being together, it more than makes up for it. It's all about attitude. In one of the most passionate parts of the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur prayers, the Unetane Tokef prayer, we say the Chotam Yad Kol Adam Bo, the signature of every person is written in God's book. But I read a different interpretation that suggested that the book we're talking about is not God's book, it's our book. The signature of every person is written in our book. Every person we've ever come into contact with, interacted with, we have their signatures in our books because they've had an impact on us. The lesson is that having a diverse group of friends shapes us. Being exposed to different people can be a big blessing, and it does make us better and happier people, less inclined to kvetch and complain. So the next time you're stuck in a big crowd, standing in the airport, you picked the wrong day to fly, consider that creating and existing in a crowded space may be uncomfortable and claustrophobic, but with the right perspective, it can also be a great gift, even a miracle. Chag Sameach.